Hello and welcome to anyone who's watching this video. In this video I'm looking at budget levels. Just recently I've been looking for some new levels. For the last unbelievably 46 years I've only used two spirit levels, a Stabila 800 cast aluminium and a Stabila what I call a boat level, now they call them torpedo levels. And with a straight edge, I've been able to do every job I've needed to do, from laying flats of concrete to concrete shuttering pillars and everything else, from fitting kitchens to putting door frames in to putting roofs on. And they've served me well. When I started out, you didn't have this. The longest level you got then was a 4 foot, which bricklayers used. Most joiners would either have a 32 inch, which is an 800, or a 3 foot, which is a 900, because you carried all your tools in a tool basket, so you had a level that fitted on the top of your tool bag. So it was only recently I was putting some stairs in, and I got my old faithful levels there, but there wasn't any electricity on and there wasn't a lot of natural light, and I realised I was struggling seeing the vials. The perspex is clouded and the vials themselves are clear, they've lost their fluorescent green colour, and I realised I was struggling to use them, so I ended up using somebody else I was working with, using their levels because they were a lot clearer. So I decided that I'd start looking for some new levels. I didn't want to spend a fortune. I'm only probably 2 or 3 years out from retiring, so I didn't really want to splash out on Stabila. So I decided to start looking for, I thought I'd look at the budget ones first, and just out of curiosity to see how things had moved on and whether they were any good. And I started off on the low end of the market. I went Minotaur, which is from Tool Station, and that it was a box. They're all box beam levels that I'm looking at, because the I-beam, they're not as strong, they'll twist. So I would always say look for a box beam level, because they're more stable and stronger. So I had a look at the Minotaur one, and it was a straight level. It was relatively well made. It was cheap, but it wasn't accurate. So that was a no. I tried Hilker. They've been making tools, lower end tools, for a long time, and they were promising, and they were spoiled by two things. They were accurate, but the two things that spoiled them was, one was that the bubble was too small. It was too small, or the lines were too far apart, so there was a large gap between the bubble and the line, which made it a bit more tricky to use and a bit less accurate. And the other annoying thing was the handles here actually protruded past the casting. If you look at that now, you can see the handles behind this face. So if you want to put it up a wall and draw a line down it, you couldn't, because it would rock on the handles, which was a shame, because for a cheap set of levels, they were accurate, given that the bubble was small or the lines were wide apart, and they weren't bad at all. But the handle situation was a deal breaker, because you very often have to mark a line down a wall or something like that. I used some cheap Stabilas that a friend of mine's got, which don't even have a machine surface on the top. They're just a box, and they're painted, and they are the lower end Stabilas, and they're just not accurate. So I spoke to a guy who sells, he works in a tool shop, and he sells Magnuson and Forged Steel, which are Screwfix brands, and he said that they're not that accurate. So so I decided to look elsewhere, and what I've come up with is the Stanley Fatmax Pro box beam. They're not the I-beam. Stanley do a level that looks like this, but the handle, if you look at the handle on this rubberized handle is the giveaway. These are the box beam ones. The other ones have a diagonal cutout. They're actually a different profile, but you'd hardly notice if you saw them on the shelf. You'd think they were the same thing. But the I-beams won't be as strong. So just a quick look at why cheap levels are not worth bothering with, really. Not cheap. I class the Stanley Fatmax as budget, but they're accurate and they're usable, and that's all you need, really. But if you look at a lot of the cheap levels, a vial, if you imagine this was a vial in a level, it should have a very slight camber in it, top and bottom, so that the bubble sits in there nicely. But the cheaper ones, it'll be exaggerated, so it'll be more pronounced to the curve, and the bubble sits in the top more, and that makes them less accurate because the bubble is less free to move from side to side. And the worst ones are the ones that are a bent tube like that, where the vial is actually a bent tube, and they're frankly useless. If you turn the level over, then they're no use at all. The bubble is split, and that's no use to anybody. So having looked through them, I've decided that the best thing is, in my opinion, don't buy a set, because if you buy, although they can be very tempting sets of levels, if you've got 4 in a set and they're not particularly well made, probably 2 of those set are going to be out, maybe even 3. You might only have 1 good one in that set. And the issue then is you can't return the 3 that are out and keep the one that's accurate. You've got to return the whole set. And then when the next set comes, you're probably going to be in exactly the same place. I'd take an opinion that probably half the levels in a set will be out. So I think you're better off buying individual levels, then you can check them, and if they're out, send them back, get another one, try it until you get one you're happy with, and do it that way, because that way you can sort through them. The ones I've decided to go with, and the ones I think offer the best value as cost and quality, are these Stanley Fatmax box beams. They're the Fatmax Pro, actually. They're a sensible weight. They're well made. I like to level, see if you can twist it. If you can twist it, then it's poor quality and it's not going to last long. So get hold of the ends and twist them and see if there's any flex in them, and that'll give you some idea of how rigid they are. But I've bought the 1800, which was £60 and then I bought the 1200, which was £46. I bought the 800, which was £35, and the 600, which I'm holding here, which was £25, and a boat level, which some people now call a torpedo level, was £16. But what I'd say to anybody who's looking for a level or going to buy one, don't go cheap, because they might look very tempting, a set like this for £50 or something like that, but they're really not. Only if you're lucky, only half of them will be accurate, and you're better off just picking one level that you're going to use the most and buy a better one. My staple for my personal use is a boat level, and somewhere like a 30, like an 800 to a 900 mil, and a boat level will do virtually, with a straight edge, it'll do everything I want it to do. So if money's an issue, just pick the size that's the most useful to you. And the most flexible, I would have said, is a 3 foot, because you can do it in kitchen units and kitchen cabinets. You could do door frames with it with a straight edge. And then a boat level, because then you can do inside cabinets and small areas where you can't get with the bigger one. And in my opinion, for woodwork and construction inside cabinets and stuff like that, or even putting doors and frames in, those are the most usable ones, and it'd be better buying a couple of good ones like that, and you can always add to the others at a later date. But they've done me, those sizes have done me for 40 odd years, and I think that's the best way to go. The reason I bought the longer ones, the 1200 and the 1800, for me personally, is I want them for straight edges at work, for marking out on sheets. I'm struggling a bit with straight edges and having to make straight edges and keep them straight. So I've actually bought the longer ones to use as straight edges more than levels. So my personal opinion is sort of bang for buck or a budget level, these Stanley Fatmax Pros box beam, I think for the money you can't complain. They're straight, they're accurate, they're strong, and I think they'll do good service. I do know people who've had joiners actually are using them for site work, and they've looked after them, and they've had 5 or 6 years out of them, and they're still going strong and they're still accurate. If you're a bricklayer, it's a no-brainer. Just go for Stabila. The only criticism I would say of these, but it's a double-edged sword. The vials are open at the top, so they could be damaged possibly by something falling on them, or them falling on something. So for a bricklayer, I think you're better off getting one where the case goes over the top of it with a hole in it, because then it'll protect the vial. But I would have said all day long, if you're a bricklayer, Stabila's the way to go. Get the box beam highest, one of those that looks like this with the handles in it, and that's the way to go. They do an R-shaped profile one, which if you look at the end of it, it's actually an R shape, but they look a bit different, maybe clumsy. I'm sure they're super strong, but I think you'd be better sticking with more a traditional design like that. So that's my view on it. Better to buy something a little bit better than to buy 4 really cheap ones in a bag. They're not going to be reliable, and 50% of them are probably only going to be straight edges. They're not going to be spirit levels. So I think for the best budget buy, looking over all of it, they're not without their faults, but I think these are the best I can find at sensible money, and I still consider them to be cheap. If you take the 3 foot for 35 quid, I don't think you can go wrong with that for the quality. And if you take the boat level or torpedo level at £16, what you're looking at £50 for the 2 there, and that's a better buy than buying a cheap set for £50. It'd be better to buy those. They'll do everything you need them to do with a straight edge if you need to lengthen it. And then if you need the other longer ones, you can add to them at a later date, but it's better to start off with 2 reasonable ones. And at the budget end, I think these are punching above the weight, really. I wouldn't class them by any means a high-end level, but they are a good level, and for the money they're certainly accurate and usable. So I think that about covers everything. I don't think I've got anything else to add. So I think I'll wrap it up at that, and thank you for watching. I hope this throws a bit of light or helps somebody else make a decision, or gives them some idea of what they're looking for. And thanks for watching, and take care.